I'm 21, and for most of my life, it was just me and my dad. My mom died when I was 4. I don't remember much about her, just snippets, her humming while cooking, the scent of her perfume, her soft hands. After she passed, my dad basically built our life from scratch around me. Every room in our small, slightly creaky house held a piece of her memory, and over the years, it became my anchor. Then came Cheryl. My dad met her when I was 15. She worked at the DMV, and it started off innocent enough. I didn't hate her. She smiled a lot, made an effort, and always brought me random snacks whenever she visited. At first, I actually liked her. But things changed once she and my dad got married the summer before my senior year. She moved into our house, my mom's house, and little by little, things started vanishing. The lace curtains my mom sewed, the record player we used to play on Sunday mornings, her collection of books, all gone without warning. Cheryl claimed it was to freshen up the space, but it felt like she was slowly erasing my mother. By the time I left for college 2 years ago, I hardly recognized the house anymore. Still, I told myself it was just stuff, that the memories couldn't be taken. That the house, at least, was still ours. I couldn't have been more wrong. During my first year at college, I barely came home. It wasn't just the usual adjustment to dorm life or the busyness of classes, it was the weird sense that I didn't belong in my own home anymore. Every time I called my dad, Cheryl answered. She'd say he was out fixing something or napping or busy in the garage. I got used to hearing her voice before his, like she was the new gatekeeper of my past. Still, I didn't question it much. I told myself they were newlyweds and I should let them have their space. I had midterms and papers and new friends. Besides, I was only 2 hours away. I could come home whenever I wanted, right? Except, every time I tried to visit, Cheryl would find a reason to delay it. She'd say the water heater was broken, or the place was a mess, or my dad wasn't feeling well. Once, she even claimed there was a raccoon infestation and it wasn't safe. I remember laughing awkwardly and telling her I'd just stay at a hotel then. She didn't have an answer for that and hung up a little too quickly. I finally forced a visit over winter break, but something had shifted. My room was gone. I mean, it was there, technically. But it wasn't my room anymore. The walls had been painted beige, all my posters and art taken down. My desk was replaced with a treadmill and some plastic drawers filled with crafting supplies. When I asked where my stuff was, Cheryl told me she'd put it all in bins and stored it in the garage for safekeeping. I felt like a guest in my own space. No one even warned me. I swallowed my anger, though. My dad looked happy for the first time in a long time, and I didn't want to rock the boat. He hugged me tight, told me he was proud, said he missed me. I clung to that. But deep down, something didn't sit right. My mom's picture was no longer on the mantel. Her garden was gone, paved over for a fire pit Cheryl had wanted. When I asked about it, my dad went quiet. That visit lasted barely 2 days. I told them I had to get back early to prepare for the spring semester, but the truth was, I couldn't stand the way it felt. Like I had to ask for permission to exist there. Then came last week. I was in the middle of prepping for finals when I got a voicemail from a real estate agent. She congratulated me on the successful closing of the property and said she'd be in touch to finalize a few last documents. I thought it was spam at first, until she mentioned the street address. My address. My heart nearly stopped. I called back immediately, thinking it had to be a mistake. But no. It wasn't. The house had been sold. Sold. Without so much as a phone call or warning. The only thing the agent could tell me was that Mrs. Lane, Cheryl, had handled everything. She had the deed, she signed the paperwork, and it was done. I sat in my tiny dorm room in complete silence for nearly an hour. Just numb. That house wasn't just bricks and drywall. It was every birthday party, every quiet morning with my dad, every memory of my mom I had left. And it was gone. Worse, I hadn't heard a word from Cheryl or my dad about it. When I finally called my dad, he didn't answer. Cheryl did. And what she said next, that's what broke me. Cheryl sounded cheerful when she answered, like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't standing in the ashes of my childhood. I asked her straight up, what the hell happened to the house? There was this pause. A long one. Then she sighed and said, like she was annoyed, oh, you found out. She told me she and my dad had been talking about downsizing for a while, that the maintenance was too much for them, that it made more sense financially to sell it and get something fresh. She said it like she was talking about an old couch, not the only place I'd ever called home. Then she dropped the bomb. The house was technically in her name now. My dad had transferred the deed into both of their names a year after they got married to simplify things, and then a few months ago, he quietly signed it over to her entirely. Apparently, it was part of a new estate plan she'd convinced him was better for taxes or some other nonsense. I could barely breathe. I asked her where my dad was. She claimed he was taking a nap and didn't want to be disturbed. Nap? I was freaking out and he was napping? I told her I wanted to speak to him, now. She got snippy then, said I was being rude, that I had no right to call and yell at her like this, that I didn't even live there anymore. As if that meant I didn't get to be upset about my entire past being sold off behind my back. And then, no joke, she hung up on me. I called again. And again. No answer. Finally, my dad texted me. Just one line. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. That wrecked me. This was the man who used to wait in the car during my soccer practices with a thermos of hot chocolate. Who spent 3 years learning to braid hair after my mom died. Who walked me to school every day until I begged him to stop in middle school. Now he was just done with me? I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know if there was anything to do. But something about Cheryl's voice, the way she spoke so confidently, like she didn't expect me to push back, lit something inside me. Because there was one thing she didn't know. When I was 16, my dad and I had signed a time capsule agreement with the local historical society, something he did as a surprise for my birthday. We wrote letters, enclosed a few keepsakes, and signed a small note about our home. A legacy capsule, he called it. The society had made a copy of the house's deed and added it to the archive for documentation. And I remembered something strange from that day. My dad made a joke about how he was keeping me on the paperwork just in case I ever wanted to sell it when I was older. Keeping me on the paperwork. So now, I had a mission. The next day, I skipped my morning classes and went straight to the town's historical society office. It was this tiny brick building downtown, one I hadn't stepped foot in since high school. The receptionist looked confused when I asked about the time capsule archive, but after I explained the date in my dad's name, she led me to a back room. And there it was, our file. Inside, there were photos, a note my dad wrote about how the house was a living memory of his late wife, and, most importantly, a photocopy of the deed. My heart almost stopped when I saw it. My name was there, clear as day, right under his. He hadn't just said it to be sweet. He had actually added me to the title years ago, back when I was still in high school. I took a picture of the document with my phone. My hands were shaking. I left the Historical Society building without saying a word and walked half a block before I had to sit down on a bench. The weight of everything hit me all at once. Cheryl hadn't just sold my childhood home, she may have done it illegally. I called a law student I knew from one of my gen ed classes. He wasn't a real lawyer, but he knew enough to point me in the right direction. He told me I needed a property attorney ASAP. If Cheryl had transferred ownership without my consent, and I was still legally on the title, the sale might not even be valid. That night, I barely slept. My thoughts were a constant loop. What if this worked? What if I could reverse the sale? But also, what if it didn't? What if the house was already gutted, torn apart by some renovation-happy buyer? The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with an attorney back home. It was over Zoom, and I was jittery the entire call. She looked over the photo I'd taken, asked me a ton of questions, and then finally said something I wasn't ready for. This may have been fraud. If what you're showing me is accurate, Cheryl had no legal right to sell that house without your signature. Fraud. She said we could subpoena the full sale documents, track the money trail, even file a formal complaint with the county recorder's office. The process wouldn't be easy, and there were no guarantees, but she believed we had a strong case. I felt hope for the first time in days. But just as I was starting to breathe again, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a picture of Cheryl, standing in front of the house, with a big red sold sign behind her, and a caption underneath. New Beginnings House with Garden Sparkles #good riddance. She had posted it publicly, mocking me. That was the moment I knew, this wasn't just about a house anymore. It was war. That photo felt like a punch to the gut. The smug smile on her face, the #good riddance, it wasn't just a celebration. It was a message. She knew what she was doing. And she wanted me to see it. I sat there staring at my screen, heart racing. I was angry, yeah, but more than that, I felt betrayed. Not just by Cheryl. By my dad. He had to know. Even if she handled the paperwork, there was no way he didn't realize what she was doing. And if he remembered what he told me years ago about putting my name on the deed, then he knew I was still legally part owner. So why didn't he say anything? Why didn't he stop her? I started calling again. No answer. I sent him a text, begging him to talk to me. Told him I had evidence. Told him I wasn't going away. Nothing. Just silence. So I did something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I went home. I packed an overnight bag and took the 2-hour drive without telling anyone. And when I pulled up to what used to be my home, it didn't feel real. The yard looked different. The bushes were gone. The porch had been painted some god-awful shade of gray. The mailbox had a new name sticker, the Bradfords. I didn't recognize it anymore. But I knocked anyway. A man answered. Early 40s, friendly face, but cautious. I told him my name and said I grew up in the house. I didn't go into legal stuff, just that I needed to know if Cheryl or my dad had left anything behind. He invited me in. The house was mid-renovation. Walls half-painted. Boxes everywhere. My bedroom door was wide open, and inside, there were paint swatches taped all over the walls. And then I saw it, shoved behind one of the boxes in the corner. My mom's jewelry box. It had been mine since she passed. I used to keep it on my nightstand. I hadn't seen it in years. I thought Cheryl had thrown it away. I asked the man if I could take it. He said yes, looked a little unsure, but didn't argue. That box felt like my entire childhood in my hands. When I left, I sat in my car and cried. Not a quiet, single-tear cry. A full-on, gut punch, face in my hands kind of breakdown. I cried because everything was different. Because my dad had chosen someone else. Because I didn't know who I was without that house. Because Cheryl had taken everything, and smiled while doing it. But that was the last time I cried over her. Because I went back to campus with a new plan. And this time, I wasn't just going to get answers. I was going to get justice. Back on campus, I was laser-focused. Finals, friends, everything else took a back seat. My attorney moved fast. She submitted a formal request to access the sale documents and filed a claim disputing the transfer. Cheryl had forged my signature on at least one of the disclosure forms. I knew it. Now we just had to prove it. And we weren't alone. Turns out, the new homeowners, the Bradfords, had noticed some things weren't adding up too. Like how the property taxes were still showing a co-owner. Me. They weren't happy about that. I reached out to them through my attorney, and they agreed to cooperate. Said they wanted no part in a lawsuit and were already feeling duped. Cheryl had told them it was a clean sale, and that the house had been in her family for years. A complete lie. While all that was unraveling legally, something else happened. A package showed up at my dorm. No return address. Inside was a manila envelope stuffed with old photographs. Photos of me and my dad. Me at dance recitals. My mom holding me in the hospital. Stuff I hadn't seen in over a decade. And a handwritten note. Thought you might want these back. I'm sorry. It wasn't signed. But I knew the handwriting. It was my dad's. I read that note 100 times. And it never made sense. Why not call? Why not explain? Why do this in secret? That night, I looked through every photo. Every single one. And at the bottom of the stack, I found something taped to the back of a birthday picture from when I was 9. A flash drive. I didn't even own a USB port anymore, but I found someone with an adapter and opened the files in the library. What I saw changed everything. There were documents, PDFs, scanned copies, of Cheryl's emails to a buyer. One dated before the house was ever legally in her name. Others had her discussing delays in getting the co-owner to sign and how she'd figure out a way around it. But there was one voice memo that made my blood run cold. It was Cheryl. She didn't know she was being recorded. She was talking on the phone to someone, maybe her sister, and she said, "It's just a name on paper. She'll never know. By the time she finds out, it'll be done." She laughed after she said that. Like it was all a joke. But she wasn't laughing anymore. Because now I had evidence. Legal proof. She lied. She manipulated my dad. She forged documents. And she stole from me. The next day, we filed for a formal injunction to freeze the final disbursement of sale proceeds. We were officially suing Cheryl for fraud, breach of contract, and property theft. And that was just the start. Once the lawsuit was filed, everything changed. Cheryl must have gotten wind of it within a day because I got a call from my dad. His name flashed across my screen like a ghost from another life. I froze. After everything, after silence and betrayal and lies, now he wanted to talk? I let it go to voicemail. I needed to hear his voice without the pressure of a live conversation. His message was short. Just, I didn't know. Please let me explain. That night, I sat in my car for an hour before calling him back. I didn't know what I expected, maybe a fight, maybe guilt, maybe silence again. What I got was something else entirely. He was crying. My dad, the man who once patched a broken water heater with duct tape and a YouTube tutorial, was sobbing on the other end of the line. He told me he had no idea Cheryl had forged my signature. That she told him I'd signed everything digitally. She even showed him screenshots of emails from me, emails I never sent. She manipulated him, plain and simple. And here's the worst part, he believed her because she told him I didn't care about the house. That I'd said it was just a building and that I didn't want to be tied down. He thought I was moving on, living my own life, that I wanted a clean break. He said he kept trying to reach out. That Cheryl kept saying I was too busy or stressed with college. She handled his phone, his email, screened everything. And I believed him. Not because I wanted to. Because I could hear the shame in his voice. The way it cracked when he said, I should have called you anyway. I should have known better. We talked for nearly an hour. He didn't defend Cheryl, not once. He didn't beg me to drop the lawsuit. All he said was, do what you need to do. I won't get in your way. Just, please don't cut me out for good. That should have been a moment of healing. Of reconnection. But it wasn't. Not really. Because after we hung up, I got another text. From Cheryl. It was a screenshot of a bank statement. The sale money? She had moved it. All of it. Into a new account under her name only. Out of reach. Fast. And she captioned it with 3 words. Nice try, sweetheart. That's when I knew this wasn't over. Cheryl was still playing games, but I wasn't a scared little kid anymore. I was coming for her. 2 days after Cheryl's little power move with the bank screenshot, we filed an emergency motion. My attorney was already 5 steps ahead, and because Cheryl had transferred those funds after the lawsuit was filed, we had her cold. It was financial misconduct. She had tampered with assets under litigation. The judge signed off on a temporary freeze. Any accounts in her name, directly or jointly connected to the home sale, were now locked. She couldn't touch a cent. And best of all, we subpoenaed the bank. Every transaction, every move she made, down to the minute. She couldn't hide anymore. And then it got worse for her. Because the Bradfords filed their own complaint. They wanted damages. Said Cheryl had misled them about ownership, forged documents, and knowingly sold a disputed property. Their attorney reached out to mine, and now we were forming a paper wall around her, claims stacking, evidence mounting. But Cheryl? She wasn't going down quiet. She went online. Started posting cryptic updates on Facebook. Stuff like being punished for helping someone doesn't make you the villain and they always turn on you when they can't control you. She turned off comments, of course. Coward. But I saw the cracks. Friends started unfriending her. Neighbors messaged me quietly to say they were sorry, that they had no idea what was really going on. Someone even sent me a video, Cheryl standing outside her new condo, yelling at a delivery guy about a missing wine subscription box. She was unraveling. And it was just beginning. Because I wasn't done. I went back through every old email, every document she'd ever sent me. I found small things, dates that didn't line up, edits made at weird hours, email addresses slightly off from my dad's. She was sloppy. And greedy. My attorney added identity fraud to the list of charges. Then came the final blow. The county clerk's office confirmed that the notarization on the sale transfer, where my name supposedly appeared, it was falsified. No in-person verification. The notary listed hadn't worked with Cheryl in over a year. Someone had stolen their stamp. Game over. The case was escalating fast. Cheryl could now be facing criminal charges, depending on how the DA wanted to proceed. Her fake sale was becoming a very real crime. And through it all, my dad kept calling. Checking in. Apologizing. He started sending me things, photos of my mom, scanned pages from an old journal she kept, even the recipe card for her banana bread, stained and faded from years of use. I think he was trying to find a way back to me. But the thing is, this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me finally standing up and saying enough. And Cheryl? She was about to lose a lot more than money. The court date arrived faster than I expected. A preliminary hearing just to lay the groundwork, but I showed up in person. I wanted Cheryl to see me. I wanted her to know I wasn't scared anymore. She walked into that courthouse in a beige suit and oversized sunglasses like she was heading to brunch instead of facing potential charges. She didn't look at me. Not once. But I saw her hands trembling when the clerk called her name. My lawyer went first, laying out everything, the forged signature, the falsified notary record, the bank transfers. The judge barely looked up while reading the documents. But when the recording of Cheryl's voice played, the one where she said I'd never know, he paused. Then he looked at her. And he asked a single question, did you say this? She opened her mouth, closed it, looked to her lawyer. Then whispered, I don't remember. That was all she said. The judge didn't respond. He just nodded and moved on. But I knew. In that moment, she lost him. Afterward, my dad waited outside the courtroom. He looked older, tired, worn down in a way I hadn't seen before. He hugged me when I walked past, and for a second, I let him. He told me he'd agreed to testify if needed. That he wanted to make it right. I believed him. But it didn't undo what had been done. Later that week, the Bradfords settled privately with me through their lawyer. They didn't want the house anymore. Said the energy around it was too toxic. They agreed to relinquish ownership if I covered part of their renovation costs. My attorney negotiated it down to pennies compared to what they wanted. And just like that, the house was back in my name. Not just legally. Fully. Mine. I drove back that weekend. Stood on the porch alone at dusk, holding the keys. The paint was still awful, the garden was still gone, and the mailbox still said Bradford. But it was mine again. Every broken tile, every squeaky stair. Mine. Inside, I found more remnants Cheryl had left behind. An empty wine rack. A vanity with her initials carved into the side. And in my old room, shoved deep in the closet, a single shoebox taped shut. Inside were photos. Not of her. Of me. Printed selfies, birthday pics from my social media, even ones I didn't remember posting. Notes scribbled on the back, still just a kid. So easy to control. She won't come back. It made my skin crawl. This wasn't just about greed. Cheryl hadn't sold the house just for money. She wanted me gone. Forgotten. Erased. But I was still here. And she was the one losing everything. The case went to trial 2 months later. By then, Cheryl was no longer posting motivational quotes or thinly veiled insults on Facebook. Her account had gone dark. Her friends stopped defending her. Even her own sister, who once called me spoiled for pushing back, sent me a private message apologizing. The trial didn't last long. The evidence spoke for itself: fake documents, the tampered notary stamp, forged emails from me, even manipulated bank records showing how she funneled the money through 3 different accounts in an attempt to hide it. But the biggest blow came from my dad. He took the stand in a blue tie I'd bought him when I was 12. His voice shook, but he didn't flinch. He admitted that he'd been naive. That he'd let someone into our lives without protecting the parts that mattered. That he'd failed to listen to his daughter when she tried to come home. He looked right at me when he said it. And for the first time in years, I believed he saw me, not just as his kid, but as someone who fought back when no one else would. The verdict was swift. Cheryl was found liable for fraud, identity theft, and unlawful transfer of property. The judge ordered her to repay every cent from the sale. She also faced criminal charges for document forgery and perjury. Her sentence was short, just a year with probation and fines, but it didn't matter. She was ruined in every way that counted. Her reputation was gone. Her money? Frozen and rerouted to the damages she owed. Her marriage? Over. My dad filed for divorce the same week the trial ended. As for me? I'm still in the house. It's not the same, not really. But I'm rebuilding. Room by room. I planted a new garden out front, nothing fancy, just daisies and lavender like my mom used to grow. I painted over the gray porch with the soft blue color my dad and I picked when I was 10. I even dug out the old record player from storage. Some nights, I sit in the living room with it playing in the background, and I let myself feel everything: rage, grief, relief, and peace. Because Cheryl tried to erase me. And I'm still here. Not just here, I won. I took back what was mine. And I'll never let anyone take it again.